What would you do if four 6-year-old girls walked up to you at a black tie gala, music, put $5 on the table and asked you to be their father for the night? Music. That is exactly what happened to Liam Brooks. He was a maintenance worker. He had a name badge that said his job title instead of his name, a cold cup of tea he couldn't afford to replace, and calluses on both hands from the chandeliers. Music he'd spent last Tuesday hanging in that very room. Not one person at that gala had looked up long enough to notice. His hands, wide callous, the same hands that had hung those chandeliers last Tuesday, tightened around the cold cup, like it was the only solid thing left, music in the room. And then four little girls did. They told him they had been watching the room for 11 minutes. They told him he was the only one who wasn't pretending. They unzipped a small coin purse, music, and tipped out everything inside it. $5, bills 3/4 and a yellow button with an anchor on it. They said, "We don't know what fathers cost. We've never had one at a party before." What Liam didn't know yet was who their mother was. Music. What she'd been carrying, and what was about to happen when the wrong man in a very expensive suit decided that a maintenance worker sitting at the wrong table needed to be reminded of his place. Stay with me, because the moment those four girls chose him out of an entire room full of people is only the beginning. He almost didn't hear them. The quartet appeared from somewhere between the dessert table and a column wrapped in white ribbon. Four identical faces arranged in a perfectly synchronized line. 6 years old, maybe. Dark hair, dark eyes, matching navy dresses with sashes that had started the evening tied in perfect bows and were now doing their best impression of surrender. They stopped in front of his table, all four of them. Liam looked up from the cold tea. The one on the far left spoke first, music, which he'd later learn was always the way it worked. Lily, though he didn't know her name yet, had the particular expression of a child who had thought something through very carefully and was now committed. "We've been watching you for 11 minutes, she said. Liam set the cup down. "Okay. We picked you on purpose." This from the second one, Rose. She said it the way a scientist announces a conclusion. "We looked at everyone in the room." "Everyone," the third confirmed Violet. She held a small coin purse against her chest with both hands. "And you're the only one who wasn't pretending," said the fourth Iris. Music. She had a smear of chocolate on her left wrist and didn't seem to know it. Iris's eyes dropped to Liam's right hand, the small scar running along the side, and she gave the tiniest nod like Music had just confirmed something important. Liam glanced around. No parent visible. No nanny rushing toward him with an apologetic smile. Just the four of them. Music steady as a wall. "Pretending to what?" he asked. Lily tilted her head. "Pretending to be happy." He had no answer for that. He opened his mouth and Music closed it again, which Lily seemed to take as confirmation of her analysis. Violet stepped forward. "Kuzikamen," placed the coin purse on the table between them. It made a small, serious sound against the linen. "We would like to hire you," she said, "to be our father tonight." Liam stared at the coin purse. "For how much?" he said, because he genuinely could not think of another question. Rose unzipped it with great ceremony and tipped the contents onto the cloth. $5 bills, 3/4, and a button. "We didn't know what fathers cost," Iris admitted. "We've never had one at a party before." The button was yellow. It had a small anchor on it. Liam picked it up. It was lighter than he expected. He looked at the four faces watching him. The chandeliers he'd hung were still up there. The laughter was still moving around the perimeter. But right here at this corner table, the world had gotten very quiet and very strange, and somehow impossibly very honest. "What would I have to do?" he asked. Lily smiled. It was the smile of someone who had already planned the next 3 music steps. "Just sit with us," she said, "and if anyone asks, you're ours." What Liam didn't know yet was who their mother was and what she was walking toward. Lily did most of the talking, which seemed to be a constitutional arrangement the four of them had settled long ago. She explained the situation with the precision of a child who had spent considerable time listening to adults speak and had decided she could do it better. Their mother had an event, an important one. She had been at these events before, and she always came back with the same face, the one that meant she had talked to many people and felt completely alone. She doesn't like parties, Rose said. She likes working, Violet clarified. She doesn't know how to stop, Iris added. Liam listened. His thumb moved slowly across the scar on the back of his right hand, the old habit he fell into when he was thinking hard about something. The coin purse sat between them, $5 and some change, and a button with an anchor on it. Your dad, he said carefully. He's not, he left. Lily said no particular weight to it, just information. When we were two, he said 4 was too many. Silence, short and absolute. 4 was too many, Liam repeated very quietly. Music. He thought of Theo's tiny hand gripping his shirt the night Rachel didn't come home. 4 had never felt like too many to him. It had only ever felt like not enough. That's what he said, Lily confirmed. He thought about the weeks after the accident when everything was paperwork and casseroles from neighbors and a grief that sat on his chest like a physical object. One person, his brother-in-law, Music, had said just once quietly that he didn't know how Liam was going to manage. Said it like the math didn't add up. Said it like Theo was a problem to be solved instead, music of a person to be loved. I have a son, Liam said. He's 5. His name is Theo. Music. The 4 faces recalibrated. Where is he? Violet asked. Home asleep, hopefully. My neighbor watches him when I work evenings. What does he look like? Iris, Music asked. Like a tornado, Liam said. Who learned how to apologize? Rose made a sound that was almost a laugh and then covered it with her hand. Liam looked at the $5 bills. He thought about what it cost a 6-year-old to save this much to count it out to decide this was the right use of it. He thought about the planning that must have gone into this. 4 of them in matching navy dresses watching the room for 11 minutes, deciding on him. He pushed the money back toward them. Keep it, he said. But we need to pay you, Lily said. Otherwise, it's not real. Then consider it a trade, Liam said. I'll sit with you. You sit with Music, me. A pause. Deal. Lily looked at the other 3. Shapes. Something passed between them, some signal that traveled on a frequency adults couldn't quite catch. Deal, she said. The coin purse stayed on the table between them. Liam turned the button over once in his palm and set it down. Then Violet said with the careful tone of a child who has been thinking about a question for a while and finally decided to ask, Music it. Does Theo know his mom is gone? The table went quiet in a different way than before. Yes, Liam said. Does he ask about her? Every day for the first year, Liam said. Less now, but still. Violet thought about that. What do you say? Liam looked at the button. Anchor, yellow, lighter than it should be. I say she had to go somewhere we can't follow yet. He said, Music, and that she left us both something to carry for her. Rose tilted her head. What did she leave you? He was quiet for a moment. Theo. And what did she leave Theo? Me. Rose absorbed this with the seriousness it deserved. Iris was looking at her own hands. Lily had not moved. That's a good answer, Violet said finally. I've had 3 years to work on it, Liam said. He said it without self-pity, just the plain fact of time and repetition and the way a man says something he has said so many times it no longer costs him as much to say it. Music, even though it still costs him something. He didn't know what he was agreeing to. He didn't know the woman in the deep red dress who was at that moment crossing the room, searching for 4 familiar faces in a crowd that had grown too loud and too bright and too much. He picked up his cold tea, took a sip, and made a face. Iris noticed. Is it bad? It's terrible, he said honestly. You say some. She nodded, satisfied like this too was the right answer. What happened next would catch them all off guard, especially music. Ava Sterling, who had spent 4 years learning not to be caught off guard by anything. Music. She saw the navy dresses first, four of them arranged around a corner table she hadn't noticed before because the table had a maintenance badge next to the floral centerpiece, and Ava Sterling had trained herself over years of events like this one. Music. To look past certain things. She recalibrated. Her daughters were sitting with a man she didn't recognize. He was leaning forward slightly, elbows on the table. On music, or talking to Iris, who was gesturing with both hands about something that seemed very important. Music. The man's jacket was off. His sleeves were rolled to the forearm. His hands, when they rested on the table, were the hands of someone who worked with them. She crossed the room with the particular velocity of a mother who is not panicking, but would like everyone to understand that music she is close. Girls, foreheads turned. Four faces that were immediately entirely too innocent. The man looked up. Ava had expected many things in her 11 years of navigating rooms like this one. She had not expected brown eyes that went slightly wide and then very carefully went neutral, like someone who had just realized they'd been caught doing something kind and wasn't sure if that was allowed. Miss Sterling. He stood, not the practiced rise of someone performing deference, just up, present, a little unsure. She looked at the coin purse on the table or some music, then at him, then at Lily, who had the expression of a person about to explain a reasonable decision to someone who might not immediately recognize its reasonableness. Mom, Allie said, this is our father. The room did not stop. The laughter continued in its orbit, but in the small radius of that corner table, something held its breath. He agreed to a trade, Rose added helpfully. Ava looked at the man. He was not apologizing, which she noted. He also was not smiling, which she also noted. He was just standing there with a maintenance badge and rolled up sleeves and eyes that had the particular quality of someone who had learned to be very still in difficult situations. I'm Liam Brooks, he said. I work here, building maintenance. A pause. I think your daughters may have run a more sophisticated operation than I realized when music agreed to it. Ava looked at Lily again. Lily looked back entirely unrepentant. Are you angry? Iris asked Ava. Her voice had dropped to the register she used when she genuinely didn't know the answer. Ava set her clutch on the table, music, and sat down in the chair next to Iris, which was not what she'd planned to do. She planned to apologize to the man, gather the girls, and return to the circuit of conversation she was supposed to be having. But Iris had asked the question, music, in that voice. No, Ava said. I'm not angry. She picked up the coin purse and looked inside it. She looked at the man. You were going to sit with them for $5. She, music, asked. I was going to sit with them for free, Liam said. The $5 was their idea. I didn't want to take it away from them. Ava's fingers tightened once around the coin purse before she set it back down. Her thumb brushed the smooth skin on her left wrist where a ring used to sit. The same unconscious motion she had made for 4 years whenever she felt the room closing in. She looked at the table instead of at him. She was used to reading people for a living. She was not used to being the one worth reading. Sit down, she said. Not an order, more like a door opening. Liam sat. He picked up the terrible tea. Across the room, a man in a perfectly fitted charcoal suit saw them and paused mid-conversation, eyes settling on the corner table with the particular attention of someone cataloging information for later use. Richard Ashford, former fiancé, current board member, the kind of man who called himself a friend and kept score in a ledger you were never allowed to see. He smiled and started walking toward them. Pay attention to what he says. Because Richard had spent years learning that the most effective wounds are the ones that look like care. Richard arrived like someone who had practiced arriving. He touched Ava's shoulder briefly as he came to a stop at the table's edge, familiar enough to establish music territory, light enough to deny it if challenged. Ava, The warmth in his voice was the kind that takes years to calibrate. "I've been looking for you. The Harmon Group keeps asking about you specifically, and I've been doing my best to hold the fort, but honestly, there's only so much I can do without you in the room." He made it sound like concern. He made it sound like she was needed. Then he looked at Liam and his expression did something very practiced. It didn't change at all. "I don't think we've met," Richard said with the open, generous smile of a man who is absolutely certain of his own position in every room he enters. "Liam Brooks," Liam said. He did not stand. Music. "Richard Ashford." He let it land, then tilted his chin very slightly toward the maintenance badge, the movement so small it could have been involuntary. "Are you with the venue team? I thought the staff briefing was supposed to keep everyone at their music stations during the event. I can check with the coordinator if there's been some confusion on the scheduling." Music. He said it the way a doctor delivers difficult news, regretful, helpful, blameless. "No confusion," Ava said. Of course, of course." Richard's hands came up open, conceding nothing. "I only ask because I care about how the foundation is perceived tonight. These events set a tone, and the Harmon Group in particular responds to," he paused, "music. Choosing the word with the care of a man who knows exactly what he is choosing. Context." He looked at Ava with an expression of private music concern, the look of someone sharing a confidence between old friends. "I just want to make sure we're protecting what you've built. You've worked so hard for this." "Ava, I'd hate for anything to distract from that." Violet put her dessert fork down. Music. Quietly. Iris moved closer to Liam's arm. Liam said nothing. He set the teacup down with one careful movement and looked at the tablecloth. His jaw had settled into the particular stillness of someone who had stood in rooms like this before, who had learned that the words available to him were never music, the right ones, and who had stopped reaching for them a long time ago. Richard turned back to Ava with a small, warm smile. "I'll tell them you'll be over in just a moment." He left with the ease of a man who was certain he had helped. The table held its silence. Then Rose Music said, "I don't like him." "Rose," Ava said. "He was being mean." Rose said without heat, without drama. Music, the way children state things they have simply observed. "He just did it with a nice face." Liam's eyes moved to Rose. He stayed quiet for a moment. "Smart kid," he said. Ava studied her daughters, then him. "I should go speak with the Harmons," she said. She said it to Liam, not the girls. An explanation. Music, not an exit. "We know," Lily said. "We'll stay with Liam." Ava stood, yeesh. Music, sheesh. Then stopped. She was looking at the button with the anchor on it sitting beside the teacup. "Where did that come from?" "Music," she asked. "My jacket," Liam said. "It fell off last week. I haven't gotten around to sewing it back." Ava picked it up and put it in her clutch without explanation. Music. She walked toward the Harmon Group. Liam watched her go. "She took your button," Iris observed. "I noticed," he said. What he didn't know yet was why she'd taken it, what she'd been thinking about since the moment she sat down, what she'd seen in him that the room full of people in expensive suits had walked right past without once looking down. And then 20 feet away, Iris started to cry. Not the kind of crying that children perform for attention, the real kind, the quiet kind that starts somewhere deep and comes out before the child even realizes it's coming. Liam was up before he thought about it. He didn't kneel beside her. He knelt in front of her at her exact height, the way he did every night, when Theo woke up crying for a mother who wasn't there. Around them, the party moved in its usual orbit trouser legs and silk hems, everyone standing upright, everyone, looking forward or sideways or down at a phone. The room was full of adults at full music height, navigating the world from somewhere above a 6-year-old's eye line. Liam was the only one on the floor. Hey, he said. Iris shook her head. Her hands were in fists at her sides. It's okay, Liam said. I don't want it to be okay, she said, which was so honest that Lily reached over, took her sister's fist gently, and held it. Liam reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small folded paper, the kind that gets creased from living in a pocket for too long, and without unfolding it, he held it out to Iris. She looked at it. Music. What is it? A story, he said. Theo makes me carry one in case he gets sad somewhere. Music that's not home. I fold one up in the morning. You wrote a story, Wisham. He does, Liam said. He dictates, I write. Iris unfolded Music the paper. Her fingers were still shaking. The other three girls leaned in. Liam stayed where he was at eye level waiting. And across the room, Ava Sterling, in the middle of a handshake with someone from the Harmon group, turned her head. She saw him crouching in front of her daughter. Music. She saw the paper. She saw Iris's face change from the closed expression of someone swallowing something hard to the slightly open expression of someone who has been given a small, unexpected rope to hold. Ava excused Music herself. She walked back slowly. She didn't want to interrupt. She stopped 10 feet away. She watched Liam read the story in a low voice, tilting the paper toward the light from a candle on the nearest table. She watched him pause at the funny parts and wait. Music, not rushing, giving Iris room to find her way back to herself at her own speed. Ava's breath caught. In that moment, she understood. This was the kind of father her daughters had never had. The kind who stayed on the floor until the tears stopped. And she saw his hands. She had noticed them before the calluses, the small scar on the right. But now she was close enough to see that his left hand was resting lightly on Iris's knee. Just present, just steady, the way you brace something that is still finding its balance. A man who knew how to do this did not learn it from nothing. Music. She thought about the way her ex-husband had held their daughters, correct? Performed the right gesture at the right social moment. She had told herself for 2 years that she was imagining the difference. She was not imagining music, the difference. Iris laughed a small sound. Real. Liam folded the paper back up and handed it to her. Keep it, he said, in case you need a rope somewhere that's not home. Iris looked at the paper for a moment, then at him. Did you lose someone? She asked. Children have no good reason to be this direct, and they are anyway. My wife, he said 3 years ago. The 4 girls were still. The whole particular stillness of children absorbing something true. Do you still miss her? Violet asked. Every morning, he said. But Theo and I have a deal. We're allowed to miss her and still have a good day. Both things can be true. Ava pressed 2 fingers to her left wrist, where the skin was smooth now, where a ring had once been. She had not told her daughters about the deal. She had not thought to give them one. Music. She had been so focused on making sure they were okay that she had never stopped music to give them language for the not okay. This man who cost $5 and a button with an anchor on it, music, had just given her daughter a rope. Ava's hand went flat against her sternum. She didn't notice she'd done it until she'd been standing that way for almost a full minute. But what came next would not be quiet. Because Richard was watching from across the room and he had just made a decision. Music that he would regret. Before that night, they had each been alone in the same way. Not the dramatic kind of alone, the quiet, functional kind. The kind you stop noticing because you've organized your life around it. 3 years earlier, on a Tuesday in February, Liam had sat on the kitchen floor at 2 o'clock in the morning with a stuffed elephant in his lap and a needle threaded with gray wool. The ear had come off at the seam clean, the way things give way after enough handling. Theo was asleep down the hall. The hospital paperwork was still on the table. He hadn't moved it yet. He had no particular skill at sewing. His stitches were uneven, too large in some places and too tight in others. The kind of work that holds but doesn't look like much. He did it anyway. He tied the final knot and bit the thread and held the elephant up in the light above the stove. It would do. He set it on the table next to the paperwork and went to wash his hands. The water ran cold for a long time before it warmed. 4 years earlier, in a different city, Ava had sat in a conference room at 11 o'clock at night reading a contract she had already read twice. Richard had called that afternoon to say he'd spoken with the Harmon Group on her behalf. Music. Just to smooth things over, just to make sure they understood the constraints she was working under. He'd said it gently. He'd said it like he was doing her a favor. She had not known then to name what it was. She had thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not managing well enough. Maybe 4 kids and a company and a divorce all at once is too many variables. Maybe the problem is the math. She had gone back to the contract. Outside her window, the city had continued on its own schedule. Cabs and late buses and someone walking a dog in the rain. The ordinary persistence of things that don't know they're supposed to stop. She had not cried. She had made a note in the margin of the contract and closed her laptop and gone to check on the girls, all 4 of them in 2 beds. The particular tangle of small bodies that she had learned to navigate in the dark without waking anyone. She had stood in the doorway for a moment, just stood there. Then she had gone to bed. 2 people, 2 rooms, the same specific weight of a life being carried alone in silence, in the particular hours when no one was watching. Neither of them knew then that someone would eventually see. Richard timed it well. He always did. He waited until a cluster of board members had drifted toward the entrance. The kind of people whose presence shaped a story after the fact, who would remember what they'd seen and tell it to people who mattered. Then he crossed to the corner table. He didn't sit. He stood just to the left of Liam's chair, close enough that his shadow fell across the table, across the $5 bills, across the coin purse, and across the space where Liam's hands rested. He planted one hand on the back of the empty seat beside Liam. Music. Not touching him, but leaning in, cutting the sight line between Liam and the girls with the practiced ease of someone who knew exactly what he was doing and would deny it without effort. "I owe you an apology," Richard said. He said it warmly with the expression of a man who has considered his words and chosen music them with care. Liam looked up. "I came across as dismissive earlier, and that wasn't fair." Richard's voice was low, private, the register of a genuine confidence shared between 2 men. "I get protective of Ava, old habit. We go back a long way, and I've—" Music watched a lot of people try to get close to her for the wrong reasons. He glanced at the coin purse still on the table, then back at Liam, steady and open. "I'm sure you understand. A woman in her position with 4 kids, she attracts a certain kind of attention. I just want to make sure she's protected. I'm sure you'd music want the same thing, right?" He was good. Liam had to give him that. He had just managed to simultaneously apologize, suggest that Liam had ulterior motives, invoke Ava's vulnerability as a reason for Liam to agree with him, and make the whole thing sound like 2 people on the same side. Lily's eyes moved to Liam's face, waiting to see what he would do. Rose had gone very still. Music umtem. Violet's hand found Iris's under the table. "I think," Liam said carefully, "you should probably go." Richard's expression held its warmth. It didn't even flicker. "Of course, I just wanted to clear the air." He straightened, tugged his jacket once at the lapels, enjoying the rest of your evening. He turned, and Ava Sterling said, "Richard." She was standing 6 feet away. She had come back from the direction of the Harmons without either of them hearing her. Her voice was level. Music. The red dress was perfectly still. Richard turned back with a smile already arranged. "I'm sorry. How long have you been doing that?" Not a question. Managing people on my behalf, having the helpful conversation, making sure everyone understands the appropriate context. She took one step toward him. "Did you speak to Marcus Chen that way in December when he stopped calling?" Richard's smile recalibrated just slightly. "Ava, I was only—" and the Delancey partnership last music spring. You told them I was overwhelmed that the girls made it difficult to commit to anything long term. The board members near the entrance were not looking at the floor anymore. I was protecting you, Richard said, and for the first time the warmth in his voice had a faint strain, music to it, the sound of something that has been held at a particular tension for a very long time. You were shrinking me, she said, one thoughtful conversation at a time, and I kept thinking the problem was me. Silence, clean and final. You've been on our board for 2 years, Ava continued, and her voice had shifted into the register she used when she was reading numbers. Factual, without space for negotiation. In that time, you canceled 3 site visits, missed every volunteer hour, and billed us for a dinner in which I was not present. A pause. I'd like you to resign by Monday. Richard looked at Liam once. Liam was looking at the tablecloth. He had picked up the anchor button from where Ava had left it and was turning it over in his fingers slowly entirely elsewhere. Richard left. Music. The room exhaled. Ava sat down hard. The way people do when the thing they've been bracing against is suddenly no longer there. Her eyes closed for 1 second. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. The particular release of someone who has been holding a position so long they forgot they were holding it. When she opened her eyes, she looked directly at Liam, not the measured gaze she had been using all evening. Not the evaluating look of someone building a case, but the look of a woman who had just set something down after carrying music it for a very long time. She reached across the table and touched the back of Liam's hand. Just once. Just long enough for both of them to feel it before pulling away. Lily said, "That was very good, Mom." "Don't celebrate yet," Ava said, but the edge was gone from her voice. Gone. Just gone. Liam set the button on the table between them. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know. He'll make it harder. Board politics. Probably." She looked at the button. "I've been in harder rooms." He looked at it too. "You're sewing," she said after a moment. The ear on Theo's stuffed elephant. Music 3 times. He looked up. "I read people," she said by way of explanation. "I do it for a living." Music. "What did you read?" She considered. "A man who fixes things carefully, more than once, without complaining about it." Liam said nothing. Music. Outside, somewhere beyond the chandeliers he'd hung, and the laughter that had resumed its orbit, and the $5 bills still sitting on the corner table, the city moved at its regular speed. Trucks, lights, people going home. Something had stopped here. Something had started. What it would become, neither of them could have told you yet. But Iris had a folded piece of paper in her pocket, and Ava Sterling had a button with an anchor on it. Music. And Liam Brooks, for the first time in 3 years, had forgotten about the cold tea. Later, when the last guests had filtered out and the venue staff had begun folding tablecloths, in the distance, Liam shrugged back into his music maintenance jacket and zipped it to the collar. He picked up his name badge from the table where he'd set it down at some point during the evening and held it for a moment before clipping it back on. He said a quiet goodbye to each of the girls by name. Lily, Rose, Violet, Iris. They each said goodnight back with the seriousness of children who understood that something real had happened and were treating it accordingly. He nodded once at Ava. She nodded back. He walked toward the service exit at the back of the hall, the door he always used, the one that opened onto the loading dock, in the staff parking lot, in the particular quiet of a city at 11:30. Ava stood in the lobby with the girls gathered around her waiting for the car. Her hand went to her clutch, her thumb pressed against the small round shape of the button inside. She watched the service exit door swing closed. She was still standing there when the car arrived. Music. The first time Liam came to the house, he arrived on a Saturday morning with a canvas tool bag and a thermos of coffee because Ava had mentioned once in a text that was technically about the foundation's plumbing contract that the kitchen door had been sticking for 2 months. The house was large. He had known it would be, but knowing and standing in the foyer were different things. High ceilings, pale walls with very little on them. The kind of space that has been decorated by someone who understood proportion but not warmth. Everything was expensive and correct and slightly too far apart. The furniture arranged with enough room between pieces that you could move through the room without touching anything, which was maybe the point. 4 pairs of shoes were piled by the door in a way that had no system at all. That was the first thing that felt like anyone actually lived there. Ava showed him to the kitchen and left him to it, which he appreciated. He didn't need an audience. He set his bag on the floor and crouched in front of the cabinet door. The hinge was the problem. One screw backed out and the whole thing sitting at an angle that made it drag on the frame music every time it opened. 3 minutes of work if you had the right screwdriver. He had the right screwdriver. He tightened the screw, opened the door, closed it. Clean. Quiet. He moved to the next one, which had a different issue. The hinge pin worn enough that the door lifted slightly before it seated. He tapped it back into alignment with a small hammer. One tap, two, and then held the door open and let it swing closed on its own. It closed without a sound. He was on the third cabinet when he became aware that the house had gotten quieter in a different way. Not empty quiet, listening quiet. He looked over his shoulder. Iris was standing in the kitchen doorway in socked feet, music, watching him. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Fixing the hinges," he said. She came closer and crouched down beside him with music, the unself-conscious ease of a child who has not yet learned that you're supposed to ask before you do that. "Why are they broken?" "They're not broken," Liam said. "Just loose. Things get loose over time. You tighten them and they're fine." Played music. Iris looked at the screwdriver in his hand, then at the cabinet door. "Can I try?" He handed it over. He showed her where to place the tip. He held the door steady while she turned it, her small hand gripping the handle with more seriousness than the task required. The screw seated. Good," he said. She handed the screwdriver back and sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet, watching him move to the next one. She didn't say anything else. She just stayed. From somewhere in the house, Liam heard the sound of Lily and Rose arguing about something small and unimportant. Music. He heard Violet call out a single word that resolved it. He heard Theo's voice, which meant Theo had migrated from the living room to wherever the argument was, which was what Music Theo always did. And then upstairs, he heard footsteps stop. Music. Ava was standing at the top of the stairs. He couldn't see her, but he knew the particular quality of someone going still above you. Music. She had heard the hammer taps. She had heard the cabinet doors close one after another, each one quieter than the last. The house had a different sound now. Music, small but different. Something settled. 1 year is a small word for how much can change. Theo was music 6 now. He had opinions about breakfast, a best friend named Marcus, and a habit of narrating his own life in the third person, which Liam had decided not to correct because, honestly, it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. The Liam Brooks Foundation for Single-Parent Families had a website Ava had stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning. Music to design herself, which she would deny if pressed, and which had a picture on the home page of a folded piece of paper. Not staged real. Iris had found it in her pocket weeks after the gala and handed it to Ava one morning at breakfast, and Ava had taken a photo before she knew she was doing it. The foundation was small. It had 7 partner organizations. It had had a hotline staffed by volunteers 2 evenings a week and a monthly resource drop that 43 families had used in the first 6 music months. Small math, the kind that doesn't look like much on a board until you know whose names are in it. Music B. Liam still worked mornings at the event center. He'd been offered a promotion 3 times and taken the third one because Music Theo needed the health insurance and because there was nothing wrong with a man knowing the value of a steady wrench. Music in a difficult world. On Tuesday evenings, he drove to a rented community room 2 blocks from the center and sat in a circle of 7 other single fathers who were all in their own way, Music trying to figure out what it meant to be enough. He didn't run the group, he just showed up. That was the whole thing. It turned Music out. Showing up was the whole thing. Some nights Ava would stand in the kitchen doorway and watch Liam help Lily with her math homework, while Theo sat on his lap not paying attention to the math, just sitting there leaning back against Liam's chest with both arms hanging at his sides. She never said anything. She just smiled, the real smile, the one that reached her eyes. Iris had started drawing. Violet had started a rock collection she organized by weight. Rose had a library card she treated like a passport. Lily was building a case, she said, for some argument she hadn't finished yet. Ava had stopped touching her left wrist when she was nervous. She'd started doing something else instead. Music. Something she noticed one evening when she was standing in that kitchen doorway, watching Liam read to all 5 children. At once, the 4 girls and Theo, who had fallen asleep with his head on Iris's knee, and she realized her hand was at her sternum. Flat, steady, like she was checking that something was still there. It was. Some things you lose. Some things you find in a corner of a room where the tea has gone cold, and 4 small faces have decided after 11 minutes of watching Music that you are exactly the right person for the job. Not because you are perfect, because you are present. Not because you have the right clothes or the right title or the right way of entering a room, because you stay. Theo woke up, looked around and said in his third-person voice, Theo is not sure where he is, but Theo is Music, okay? And Liam said, yeah, me too, buddy. And Iris laughed. And the room, this small, ordinary room with mismatched chairs and a rock collection on the windowsill, held something that the Sterling event center, with its chandeliers and its calibrated laughter and its correct arrangements, had never once contained. It held people who had decided to stay. The button stayed in her clutch for 11 months. Then Lily decided it belonged on the wall, framed beside the $5 bills in the living room where everyone could see it. Music. And every night when the house grew quiet and the last lamp went out, neither of them needed to say what it meant. Music. They already knew.